Hey everybody, and welcome back. Today we're kicking off a brand new series with Spider-Man, Spider Shadow, issue number 1, written by Chip Zdarsky and drawn by Pasqual Ferry. You know, I actually started off covering this in my 1-minute comic series, but the story is so good it needs more than a minute. I'm excited to talk about it, so let's get after it. Alright, we open the issue with Peter having the worst dream. He's running through a black liquid, but it gets thicker and begins to pull him down, almost as if they're tendrils of some sort. Suddenly the sky lights up with fire and all the faces of the people he cares about. He tells them that he's doing the best he can, but the faces reply with, well, if that's true, why do so many people die? That's too much for Peter as he shoots awake. Pete comments on how stressed he's been lately and decides that, since he's up, might as well go for a night swing. Out on the town, Pete thinks about his old costume and the one he's wearing now. He loves the way the new one mimics clothing and moves on command, but a little part of him misses the classic red and blue. Personally, I love the look of the black suit, but hey, that's just me. Suddenly a woman screams for help as she's being attacked by 2 thugs. Spidey swings over and dismantles the one with ease. The other grabs the woman and holds her hostage. Well, that seriously upsets Spidey, and he webs up the guy's hand and comes at him with insane speed and power. He finishes them off by webbing them into a tight cocoon. After making sure the woman is alright, Spidey takes off into the night. Feeling accomplished and a little on the exhausted side, Spidey thinks about heading home until a voice says no. Spidey, stops in his tracks and takes a look around, but he doesn't see anyone. Spidey shakes it off and heads home. Personally, if that was me, that would freak me the heck out. But, again, that's just me. As if his night wasn't weird enough, Pete is having another nightmare about the people he can't save. Again, he wakes up in a fright, but this time someone is in his swing zone. As Pete snaps out of it, he realizes he managed to push MJ, who was just trying to wake him up. She hits the ground hard and is completely baffled. Pete apologizes, and MJ explains why she walked into his place to begin with. She apologizes for running out after she found out he was Spider-Man, but she turns her attention to his new suit. She comments on how it feels and that she's noticing Pete is becoming darker, more unhinged. Pete says that, nothing's been going on, and whatever it is, he'll figure it out. A bit later, Pete has suited up and is swinging about, until his suit just stops working and he starts to tumble. At the last possible second, the suit shoots out its webbing and Spidey safely lands on the ground. However, he doesn't have a second to catch his breath because his Spidey sense is going off like crazy. Not far away, Hobgoblin blows his way straight out of a building. Spidey immediately swings in and smacks Hobgoblin right out of the sky. Spidey thinks to himself that he has to end this quick, but the car near Hobgoblin detonates. Spidey and Hobby go flying in opposite directions, and Hobby is the first to regain himself. He goes to leave, but Spidey rips the destroyed car off the ground and hammers him with it. Hobby is down for the count, but Spidey has had it. Enough is enough. Spidey grabs him and starts to beat him within an inch of his life. The voice in his head screams, "Kill him," but Spidey refuses, instead opting to take off his mask. Now unmasked as Roderick Kingsley, Spidey wants to know why he would do this. Rod says he wanted more power, and that sets Spidey off even more. Spidey screams at him that he doesn't know what power is, and that Spidey is power. As he says that, you can see the suit change just for a second. The whole time, the voice in his head is feeding him suggestions, but in the end, Spidey doesn't even send him to prison. Instead, he leaves him humiliated, unmasked, and with a dark message to spread. Spider-Man is playing for keeps now. And with that, Spidey takes off into the city. That night, Spidey meets his main squeeze, the Black Cat, up on a rooftop. They have a conversation, and Spidey reveals what he did to Hobgoblin. Cat doesn't think it's a bad thing, and maybe they need a bit of scaring. Spidey also mentions that his suit frizzed out, and that has him worried. Cat recommends he gets it checked out, which Spidey says that he will. True to his word, Spidey heads over to Reed Richards to finally get himself checked out. Torch makes a fun comment, but Spidey tells him to shut up, and not in a joking way. Spidey apologizes and explains he hasn't been feeling like himself. When he wears the suit, he feels so much more powerful, but he feels worse when he's not. It's almost like an addiction. Reed puts Spidey in a pod and starts to run tests while Spidey gets a bit of a catnap in. While he's out, Torch comments on Spidey's coldness, and Reed agrees he's not acting like himself. But the tests will determine what exactly is going on. Inside the pod, Spidey is passed the heck out and slips into yet another nightmare. Man, he has so many of these bad dreams, you would think the villain Nightmare would be behind all this. May is screaming out for help, but Pete can't get to her without crushing the people below. Nightmare May tells Pete that it's okay, and sometimes people have to get hurt to save the ones you love, but you need to be strong. The nightmare becomes so intense it wakes Spidey and startles Reed at the same time. After everyone settles, Reed begins to inform Spidey on the results. Turns out his suit isn't some advanced material like he thought. It's alive and is bonding with him physically and mentally, which would explain the nightmares. However, after finding all this out, Spidey doesn't react the way we think he would. He almost seems empathetic to it, and when Reed requests that he remove it ASAP, Spidey basically says no. It's a sentient being, and Spidey is going to treat it as such. Things get a little tense as Reed insists he take it off, but Spidey harshly grabs Reed and calls him a greedy scientist before taking off. Feeling down, stressed, and just so damn tired, Pete heads to the only safe place he has left, Aunt May's. Well, you know, the real one, not the nightmare one. Despite her still being upset that he dropped out of college, she lets him in and provides him with some comfort. Pete tells her how badly he's been spiraling, and she tells him that he has so much amazing potential. This is the moment Pete can actually turn things around and be brought back. Or, you know, it would have been if it wasn't for the Hobgoblin. Hobby explodes through the wall, ready to fight, but oh boy, he was not ready for what comes next. Spidey suits up and absolutely takes it to Hobgoblin. The fight spills outside with Hobgoblin claiming he started this and he ruined the game. Spidey doesn't care anymore and lets his rage take over, viciously beating down Hobgoblin until he remembers May is still in the now burning building. Spidey heads toward the building, but he stops dead in his tracks as the symbiote won't let him go any further. The house explodes, killing Aunt May, while Spidey looks on in first horror, then pure rage. The symbiote whispers in his head that Hobgoblin did this, and that he needs to pay. Hobgoblin, on the other hand, is trying to make his escape, claiming Spidey started all of this, but before he can get too far, he's webbed up by a slightly mutated and a lot scarier looking Spider-Man, who tells him that he didn't start this, but he is going to end it. The issue comes to a close with Spider-Man gouging Hobgoblin's eyes out and leaving him to die. All right. How goddamn awesome is this story so far? There are a ton of things I love about this issue, but first let's chat about the art. More specifically, the cover art. Right off the bat, I noticed the spider on Pete's chest moving and acting like the symbiote. The way it spreads reminds me of an infection, which I guess it kind of is in this story. Even the title is playing on the shadow concept. If you look close on the right hand side, you can see some shading almost pulling away from the words. It's the little details like that that I love. Also, how cool is that What If logo? Speaking of detail, let's talk about the suit. I can't count how many different takes we've seen on it over the years. But this is probably one of my favorites. Yes, it's similar to the version we saw way back in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 252 and Marvel Team Up issue 141. But to me, it's the color of this version that stands out. It's so dark, it's almost a Vanta black in color. It feels like it sucks everything into the blackness, which actually kind of goes along with the theme of the story. Even when the suit changes into Pete's street clothes, it is still so dark. There was a bunch more cool little details, like right after the explosion that claimed Aunt May, you can make out some super faint details of a skull. Spidey understandably snaps right after this, so it's a pretty neat touch for what comes next. Also, if you look super close at the panel where he mutates a bit, you can see red and blue lines that make up some of his detail. I'm not sure if it was intentional, but it feels like a callback to Venom in Spider-Man the Animated Series. Honestly, I didn't catch that one until I read through this for the, third time. Man, it's the little details. I love it. Absolutely love it. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is the story. I mean, come on. How can we not talk about the story? So far, the story has been just damn amazing. Watching Spidey fall into the darkness has to be the most interesting part. It's crazy to watch a normally friendly Spider-Man treat even his friends with such aggression. Especially when he grabbed Reed's arm. It kind of feels like a sign of things to come if you ask me. They did do a version of this way back in 1989 where the symbiote took over and Pete wasn't able to get help fast enough. The glaring difference seems to be that in the 1989 version, the symbiote took over almost by force, where in this version, Spidey knows it's alive, but he's still letting it in. Now I can already see where the story is headed. Spidey is going to be full-on villain, and I don't know if there's anyone going to be able to stop him. As the story progresses, Pete is getting darker, and after Aunt May's death, I don't know if they're going to be able to bring him back. I think we're going to get a very unique version of Venom, or maybe even Poison, depending on which way they go. Alright, well, what do you guys think of the issue? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Were you kind of somewhere in the middle? Regardless, leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Later, Gators!